He stood there in a dark suit, the glow of victory surrounding him, while I stood in the shadows, invisible to the world he had chosen. Once, I was his entire universe. But now, the man who once whispered promises of forever had traded me for power, for a crown built on lies. And yet, destiny has its own way of turning the tables. Because the love he abandoned blossomed into something far greater, something he could never own again. And that, perhaps, became his deepest regret. Welcome to the Untold Love, where hearts speak their truths. If this story touches you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. I still remember those days when love felt like the only truth in my world. Back then, life was simple, almost fragile, but it carried a beauty words could barely hold. I would wake each morning with a smile, not because the day promised me riches or grand adventures, but because I knew I would see him. Just his presence was enough to turn ordinary hours into memories I wanted to keep forever. He wasn't perfect. Not in the way fairy tales describe, but to me, he was everything. His laughter had a way of disarming the storms in my heart. His eyes carried both mischief and warmth, like he was always hiding a secret joke that only I was allowed to understand. With him, the world seemed softer, kinder, as though fate itself wanted us to be together. We built our days out of the smallest joys. A walk under a pale evening sky, fingers intertwined as though they belonged nowhere else. Quiet moments where words fell silent, and yet our hearts spoke in ways language could never reach. He would tell me about his dreams, his vision for the future, and though some of them felt bigger than both of us, I believed in them, because I believed in him. There were nights when we would sit on the rooftop, staring at the stars. He would point to the brightest one and say, "That's ours." A promise that even in the dark, we'll always find each other. And I would smile, not realizing then how fragile promises could be. Still, in those moments, I trusted him completely. I trusted us. Every little thing he did etched itself into my heart. The way he brushed my hair away from my face when the wind played wild. The way his voice softened when he said my name, like it wasn't just a word, but a prayer. I held on to those details, weaving them into the fabric of my life, believing they would always be mine. Back then, I thought love was unbreakable. I thought once you found it, nothing in the world could take it away. With him, I felt safe, seen, and cherished in a way I never had before. He told me I was his forever, and I believed him with every fiber of my being. Looking back now, I realize those were the days when love was everything, pure, untainted, and full of hope. They were the beginning of a story I thought would last a lifetime. At first, I didn't notice the change. It began so quietly, like a faint shadow stretching across the light. His smile was still there, but it didn't reach his eyes anymore. His laughter still filled the air, yet somehow, it felt distant, like he was laughing at something only he could see. He started coming home later than usual. He said he was busy, caught up in meetings, surrounded by people who spoke of success and power as if it were the only currency worth chasing. I wanted to believe him, to trust that it was just a passing season. After all, hadn't he promised me forever? But promises have a way of thinning when ambition grows too loud. Our conversations, once filled with love and dreams, turned into debates I never wanted to have. I longed for a life of peace, of togetherness, meals shared on the same table, laughter echoing in small corners of our world. But he wanted more. "You don't understand," he said one night, his tone sharp, eyes restless. "This is my chance. I can't just let it go. Love alone won't build the life we need." His words cut deeper than he realized. Wasn't love enough? Hadn't we built everything we had on that foundation? In that moment, it felt like I was holding on to him with both hands, while he was already reaching for something else, something I couldn't give. I tried to bridge the distance. I dressed in his favorite colors, prepared his favorite meals, left small notes to remind him of us. For a moment, he would soften, his eyes flickering back to the man I knew. But just as quickly, the coldness would return, like a stranger had taken residence inside him. The silence between us grew heavier. We sat across from each other, yet the space felt like an ocean. I asked him once if he still loved me, and though he said yes, his voice trembled, as if even he wasn't sure anymore. Every night, I prayed. It was just a phase, that he would wake up one morning and remember the rooftop stars we once claimed as ours. But in the quiet of my heart, a fear began to whisper, maybe love wasn't enough to compete with the hunger for power. Maybe the cracks I tried so desperately to cover were already turning into fractures. And deep down, though I didn't want to admit it, I knew something was breaking. Something I might not be able to mend. The day he left didn't arrive with thunder or storms. It came quietly, disguised as just another morning, but I felt the heaviness before he even spoke. His silence carried a weight I couldn't ignore, and his eyes, once my safe place, looked past me, as though I was already a memory. He sat across from me at the table, his hands resting on a suitcase I hadn't noticed until that moment. My heart froze. 100 thoughts raced through me, but my lips refused to form words. Finally, he spoke, and each syllable was like glass shattering inside me. I can't stay, he said. His voice was calm, almost practiced, as if he had repeated those words to himself 100 times before daring to speak them aloud to me. There are things I want, things I can't have if I stay here with you. I wanted to scream, to demand why love wasn't enough. I wanted to remind him of the promises whispered under starlit skies, the vows etched into our hearts when the world felt small but ours. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out, just silence and tears burning at the edge of my eyes. He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Love doesn't build empires, he whispered, as though love were something small, fragile, disposable. I need more. I need power. And I can't chase it if I'm tied down. Those words, they sliced through me. Tied down? Was that what I had become to him, a weight holding him back from his dreams? I reached for his hand, desperate for even a flicker of the man I once knew. But he pulled away, leaving my fingers clutching only air. That rejection spoke louder than anything else. It wasn't just his body that was leaving, it was his heart, his soul, the very promise of us. When he stood, suitcase in hand, the room seemed to collapse around me. I watched him walk to the door, each step echoing like a farewell I never agreed to. My tears blurred the sight of him, but I'll never forget the sound, the quiet click of the door shutting behind him. That sound marked the end of us. I didn't chase after him. I couldn't. My body trembled, my chest ached, and my world fell silent. In that moment, I learned the cruel truth: sometimes love isn't lost in battles or storms. Sometimes it simply walks away, choosing power over a heart that was willing to give everything. After he left, the world felt unbearably quiet. Days blurred into nights, and nights into endless questions I couldn't answer. I moved like a shadow through my own life, carrying pieces of a broken heart I no longer knew how to mend. For a long time, I believed love had abandoned me forever. But life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. My first encounter with him, the man who would become my healing, wasn't wrapped in magic or sparks. It was simple, almost ordinary. He noticed my silence before he noticed my smile. And instead of demanding I be cheerful, he simply sat beside me in my sorrow, as though even my silence deserved company. He wasn't like the one who left. He didn't try to impress me with grand promises or dreams of empires. His love was in the little things, the way he remembered to ask if I'd eaten, the way he listened without interrupting, the way his presence alone seemed to stitch the torn edges of my soul. At first, I resisted. My heart was wary, fragile, afraid of being shattered again. I built walls around myself, thinking they would keep me safe. But he never tried to climb those walls. He waited, patiently, as if he knew that one day, I would open the door on my own. Slowly, without even realizing it, I began to laugh again. I began to find joy in the smallest moments, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of shared laughter, the comfort of someone who asked nothing of me but honesty. He showed me that love didn't have to hurt. It didn't have to be loud, or demanding, or tied to ambition. Love could be gentle. Love could be safe. One evening, as we walked under the fading colors of the sky, he stopped and looked at me. With a softness that made my heart ache. "You don't have to be strong with me," he said quietly. "You just have to be you." And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The walls I had built so carefully began to crumble, not out of force, but out of trust. I realized then that love wasn't about losing yourself to someone else, it was about finding yourself with someone who saw your scars and chose to stay anyway. That was the unexpected bloom of new love. Not fireworks, not promises written in stars, but a quiet, steady flame that reminded me I was worthy, I was whole, and I could love again. I thought I had closed that chapter forever. With him, the man who healed me, I had begun to build a life filled with laughter, honesty, and quiet happiness. My heart was no longer heavy, and for the first time in years, I could breathe without pain. But destiny, it seems, has a strange way of testing us. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. I was walking through a crowded place, hand in hand with the man who now held my world together. And then, out of nowhere, I saw him. The one who had left me. The man who had chosen power over love. He looked different, and yet the same. His suit was sharper, his presence louder, his aura soaked in wealth and recognition. People glanced at him with admiration, whispering his name like he was someone untouchable. But when his eyes met mine, for the first time, I saw something I had never seen in him before: emptiness. He froze, staring at me, and then his gaze shifted to the man beside me. I could almost see the realization settling into his heart: I was no longer alone. I was no longer his to return to. Later, he found a way to speak to me, his voice softer than I remembered. "You look happy," he said, though the word seemed to sting on his tongue. I didn't reply. What could I say? That I had once waited for him, cried for him, begged fate to bring him back? That I had once believed my life had ended the day he left? No, those truths no longer defined me. But he didn't stop. He tried to remind me of our past, the starlit promises, the rooftop vows, the love we once thought unbreakable. He spoke as though he could reach across time and pull me back into the world I had escaped. Yet my heart no longer ached for him. Instead, I felt a quiet strength. And when I finally spoke, my words were steady, though my eyes blurred with unshed tears. "You left me for power," I whispered. "But he gave me back myself. Do you see the difference?" For the first time, I saw regret shadow his face, deep and raw. He had achieved everything he thought he wanted, yet in that moment, he realized he had lost the only thing that could never be replaced: my love. And as he stood there, drowning in silence, I understood something: sometimes the greatest punishment isn't losing power. It's living long enough to regret the love you can never reclaim. Fate has a strange way of weaving its own justice. For a long time, I believed life had been cruel to me, tearing away the man I loved, shattering my trust, and leaving me in silence. But standing where I am now, I realize, it was not cruelty. It was direction. It was destiny pulling me away from someone who only knew how to take, and guiding me towards someone who only knew how to give. With him, the man who stayed, I built something real. Our love wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, but it was steady, rooted in truth. He held my hand not just when the world celebrated us, but when the world was silent. He loved me not for what I could offer, but for who I was, even in my brokenness. That kind of love, I came to understand, is rarer than any crown, richer than any empire. And the man who left? He still lingers on the edges of my life, though never close enough to touch me again. Sometimes I see his name in the papers, hear whispers of his power, watch people admire him from afar. Yet behind all of it, I know the truth. His eyes, once burning with ambition, now carry the quiet shadow of regret. He has everything he thought he wanted, yet nothing his heart truly needs. One evening, I caught sight of him from a distance. He stood alone, watching me laugh freely with the man who now owns my heart. For a brief moment, our eyes met. And in that silence, I felt the finality of it all. He understood I was gone, not just from his side, but from his story. I didn't hate him anymore. I didn't even wish him pain. Because fate had already delivered its answer. His punishment was not losing me in a single moment, it was living every day knowing he could never have me back. As I walked away, fingers interlaced with the man I chose, I whispered a prayer, not for him, but for myself. Gratitude. Gratitude that life, in its painful, twisted way, had led me here. And so, fate's last word was not sorrow. It was peace. He lost me for power, but I gained love that made me whole again. And in the end, that was destiny's quiet victory. They say time heals, but I believe it is love that truly restores what time tries to steal. Looking back, I can still feel the sting of the day he left me, the silence, the ache, the way the world seemed to collapse around me. For a long while, I thought that was the end of my story. I thought my heart would never find its way back to light. But standing here today, with his hand, my true love's hand, wrapped safely around mine, I realize that endings are often disguised beginnings. Losing the man I once believed was my forever didn't destroy me, it reshaped me. It tore me apart, yes, but it also made space for something truer, gentler, and more lasting. He, the one who chose power, remains only a memory now, a chapter one no longer wish to reread. His regret is his alone to carry. I do not need revenge, nor do I need his apology. My heart has already found what it was searching for. Where he once left me broken, another came and built me whole again, not by fixing me, but by loving me through the cracks. Life with this new love is not a fairy tale, but it is real. We fight sometimes, we disagree, but every night ends with forgiveness. We laugh at the small things, celebrate the simple joys, and create a life built not on ambition, but on togetherness. With him, I have learned that love is not measured by promises whispered under stars, but by actions repeated under the weight of everyday life. And as for the man who walked away, I see now that fate had already chosen our paths. His world is full of people, yet he stands alone. Mine may be small, but it is filled with warmth. That is the difference between chasing power and choosing love. So here I am, telling my story not with bitterness, but with peace. Because the truth is simple, he left me for power, but what I gained in return was far greater. I found a love that didn't ask me to be more, or less. I found a love that let me be me. And perhaps that is the most beautiful ending of all, not the regret of what was lost, but the grace of what was found.